Hi everyone, my name is Kyla Gradin and I am a mid-market account executive here at GitLab, as well as our GitLab Women Employee Resource Group lead. And I'm joined today by fantastic women who have joined us as our panelists to share a great conversation today. And I wanted to give you a little information on our employee resource group. You can read on the screen here is our mission statement that we support. Today, you will hear from women who embody leadership, collaboration, and mentorship. We are beginning many initiatives recently within our group, and I wanted to share with you that one of those initiatives are the Women in Sales Mentorship Program. And you can click on the link within the doc to learn more information. An official announcement will be coming soon, and we will be opening up the Google Doc, the Google form for applicants at that time. So that is a little bit about our GitLab Women Employee Resource Group. And now it is time to introduce our panelists for today's Fireside Chat. Carol, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Kyla. I'm Carol Teskey, part of the People Group, been with GitLab for over a year now. I joined from a number of other technology companies, and my journey, I guess, I've been asked to talk about that to get into technology. It was not intentional. I was working in a German financial institution, and a friend told me about an opportunity in eBay. I hadn't really heard about them all that much, and all of a sudden I applied and I moved, and probably it was the biggest cultural shift for me, going from that type of financial institution into the technology world. And once I moved into it, it was an area I found that I could thrive in, and also it was exciting to be in technology where they're open to new opportunities and always looking for ways to progress the company and the team members in it. So for me, it's unintentional, but I'm very happy it happened, and plan to continue in technology.
And I'm Sara, Davila. My journey into GitLab is a really interesting one, and it's very similar to Carol's. I was in oil and gas for 10 years or so, and there was a downturn in the market, and I had an amazing mentor and leader say, Sara, try something new, and like pushed me out of my comfort zone, and I ended up working for HPE. And working for HPE led me to additional DevOps companies, which led me here. And I'm incredibly grateful for the last 4 months of my journey here at GitLab. It's been amazing so far.
I'll go next. This is Michelle Hodges. I look after our global channels organization. I am just a week shy of 5 months, and it feels longer than that. I got into technology. It was my first job out of graduate school. I went to work for a woman who had previously held the same role that I roll now, and she started up what was then known as a manufacturer's rep. And she would go to peripherals companies and hardware companies and software video game companies in Silicon Valley and say, do you have a channel in Latin America? Can you sell in Latin America or in the Middle East or in Asia? And they'd say no. And she'd say, okay, I'm going to go set you up a channel, and I'm going to take 5% off of that. And after 6 months or a year, I'm going to give it back to you, and you'll have a business. And I was just fascinated that you could make a CD-ROM drive in Silicon Valley and get it to Kenya, and how you did that, and the different distributors and channel partners and logistics and all the things that you had to know. To me, I remember feeling like I was going to work every day and playing this big game of Risk. If anyone's played the board game Risk, to me, I was just fascinated by it. And that's how I got started, and have never looked back.
I'll go next. My name is Orit, and I'm the product manager for the Progressive Delivery Group at the release stage. And I guess my story is a bit different because I don't know, I was like born into it. I had no doubt in my mind what I was going to do with my life. I had like a computer at home when I was a kid. I had like Windows 3.01 even before the 3.11. I was playing with QText before there was Word or anything. So I'm like a big geek. I always knew that I was going to go into tech. Funnily enough, like none of my friends are in tech, and everyone like went to be teachers or lawyers. But I don't know, I'm really happy with it. I love tech. I've been in tech for like 15 years, and it's been a great journey thus far. I've been at GitLab for a little bit under a year, and I love it.
I'm Usha Swaminathan. I'm in the compliance group at GitLab. To talk about my journey in tech, I did my master's in computers from India, joined a startup company, and then they liked my work. They moved me to Sunnyvale. But I come from a very small town and my family is quite orthodox. So coming to US and living here on my own was kind of totally unheard of for them. But I was not ready to give up what I wanted to do in life. Came here, joined the company. The company I joined kind of had talks of acquisitions with Lucent Alcatel, a New Jersey-based company. At that time, I was in IT pre-sales. And during my visits to New Jersey, I met my husband here, got married. And like any other New Jerseyite, wanted to work in New York City to build my career there. Worked for some Wall Street banks. And for some reason, seeing all the bankers, I wanted to get into investing. So I left my job for a bit and then tried stock market for a while, but it didn't work out. So that's when I realized it's technology for me. I have to just, stick with my guts. So back to school, went to Rutgers, did certifications in security and compliance, and joined State of New Jersey as information security officer. But with my recent move of my husband's job to Atlanta, came here, saw the traffic, didn't want to commute, heard about GitLab from a friend, and here I am. And I'm enjoying every day of my, working from home. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll go next. So my name is Tetiana. I'm a backend engineer here, and I'm more than year and a half in GitLab. So my journey to tech was quite straightforward because I always wanted to be a programmer, mostly because my mom introduced me to programming and math when I was a kid. And since then, I really enjoy it. And I'm very grateful for my parents who actually put this idea in my mind that I can pursue any career and be very successful in it. And I think it was quite a big advantage for some point of time. And here I'm with my coworker, Darcy. Yeah. So that's all.
And that's great. Well, thank you so much to each of our panelists for wonderful introductions today. And now we will move into our questions. If you haven't already clicked on our doc, you can end up clicking on that doc and access to the questions that will be asked of our panelists, and then feel free to add to the doc as well as we move along here. And we will kick us off with our first question here. And our first question is for Michelle and Tetiana. And that question is, what advice would you give to a woman considering a career in the tech industry, and what do you wish you had known? Michelle, how would you answer that question?
This might not be right for everybody, but it was certainly right for me, is to know a little bit where you're going. Have an idea 5 or 10 years out what you'd like your career to look like and what type of role that you'd like to have, so that as you're going through different roles and you're looking at different opportunities, you know what skill sets and experiences you're building for. That's always been super helpful for me. And then what do I wish I had known? I wish I had taken that vacation or not taken that phone call on maternity leave. I wish I had known then that being successful in your job and being promoted and being recognized isn't always about the work. It's, to do the work, you've got to sleep well, you've got to eat well, you've got to get your exercise, you need to spend time with your loved ones, you need to be loved back, you need to connect with people at work and make friendships and those sorts of things. So, early in my career, I worked a lot and I traveled a lot, and I didn't take the extra long weekend when I was in Vietnam, and I didn't, and I did take those phone calls on maternity leave, and I wish I hadn't. I wish I had known those things and realized how important having balance is to being successful over time.
Okay,
Kyla, you're on mute.
There we go. Thank you so much for sharing that, Michelle. Tetiana, how would you answer that question?
So I'll be talking about like programming and what my career is. I've been a mentor for a Rails Girls program, and I've like see how a career started for a lot of my female classmates. And I wanted to say that like my advice would be, don't afraid to take this career path. It's not so difficult, and like everyone is capable to do this job. Because sometimes I like heard from women that like, it's tech, it's not for me, but it's definitely not true. And like everyone is capable to do the job. And additional advice will be kind of different from Michelle. For me, it's sometimes that you can put your career like as a high priority, like on top of anything else, like your family. Because like in the place where I live, there is a prejudice that women have to like put family on the top and like skip on career if it's like contradict with your like family goals. But like it's up to everyone to find their own right work and life balance. And I really wish I know this when I started my career.
Thank you for sharing. And our question moves into, what has mentorship personally meant to you? And this question is for both Sara and Usha. And Sara, you can kick us off and go first if you would like.
Yeah, for sure. So I touched on this a little bit in my intro, but I think mentorship for me is really important when it comes to career development, because sometimes we're critical on ourselves and we don't know that we can do things that other people see in us. So, for the example I gave from going to oil and gas into tech, the mentor I had at the time saw something in me and was like, hey, Sara, go for this, let's do it. And all along the way, there have been people that have believed in me when maybe I didn't believe in myself. And I'm a pretty tenacious person, for those of y'all that know me. But sometimes it's nice to have someone in the background saying, I see a little bit more for you, a little bit further than you can see. And so for me, mentorship has really meant pushing that career development even further than I thought it could go.
I totally agree with Sara's points. In my case, mentorship has sure played a very vital role, both in my education and in my career. As mentioned during my introduction, my family being very Orthodox, they were not very keen on me even doing my master's. So at some point, I wanted to just give in to them and do things and just follow what they wanted me to be. But my professor, who was my mentor at that time, he helped me to think and do things for which I would probably not repent later on in my life. So following on the same lines, I've had many mentors at my workplace too, who has helped me all along in both my professional as well as in some of my personal decisions as well, which is funny enough, like my marriage too. So for me, mentorship is truly life-changing. And since I've received a lot of value from that, I'm a mentor of my alumni association, and I help a lot of other Indian girls like me who aspire to study and build a career of their own.
Great. And our next question is for both Carol and Michelle. And the question is, what are some of the microaggressions that team members and allies can help to identify and reduce to empower all women?
Sure. Oh, Michelle,
and Carol,
do you want to
start us off?
Yeah, sure. Okay. As I thought about this, it was really three areas that I thought of, and one is recognizing opportunities when we're in meetings together where a colleague may be talked over or their point of view mightn't have been heard. And when that happens is really helping bring your colleague into the conversation. That's one part of it. The second part of that piece is making sure that you're explaining to the person who maybe talked over your colleague or didn't take their point of view about the perception that creates. Because a lot of the time we might do something and not be aware of the perception. So it's important for us to help educate each other and be aware of how we show up in work. The other one is around when we're providing training, coaching, mentoring, making sure that we're not using an emotional female as an example when we're talking about certain scenarios. And not here, but I have had that in the past, that the woman was always the emotional person that somebody needed to deal with. So I think that's an extreme example, but just being cognizant of that. And the third piece then is really around making sure that we're empowering each other. And back to Sarah's point, it's like being champions for each other. Things like this panel is wonderful. I hope we'll be doing more of them. Kyla, thanks for organizing, and calling each other's successes out, because sometimes you mightn't feel very, you're not good at PRing yourself, and it's important then we champion each other.
Well, thanks, Carol. I think my input here is super similar to yours. When I think about microaggressions, one, it tenses me up a little bit, and I know the concept of it makes people wonder, well, what can I say? Am I saying it right? Did I say it wrong? If I said something that somebody doesn't know? And so I've done talks on this before, and I try to think about micro-inclusions as opposed to microaggressions. What are the small little bits of things that you can do to be more inclusive, as opposed to always checking yourself? And I wrote something down a couple months ago about micro-inclusion. It's from the Interaction Institute for Social Change. And it says, a symbolic action that forces us to recall the humanity of others, and a small step to include someone. And so as you're going through the day, and if you're concerned about these things, think about that. And they might include things like not using pet names, simple things like that, not touching people. You might think a hug or a nudge or something is good, but it might not always be great for other people. Be careful of underestimating people, whether professionally or socially, based on who they are, whether it's where they're from, what country, gender, sex, and the rest of them. And then assuming, what they say about assume. I'm always trying not to assume anything about where someone's from. But yeah, I like that concept of micro-inclusion. Definitely.
What are the challenges that exist today about being a woman in tech? What would you have to say to that, Orit and Usha?
So I'll start off, and I think when I thought about this question, I had two things in mind. One, I think one of the biggest challenges is, since it's such a male-dominated field, there are not enough women in leadership positions, and I think that that's like one of the challenges, that there's not enough role models for women going into tech to look at and aspire to. So I think that's one of the challenges. And the other challenge, which Michelle talked about earlier, and I had personally encountered several times in my career, was the fact of how you treat a woman when she gets into a job interview or into a job at all, in terms of childcare. So when I started off my career, I had just recently gotten married, and my boss was constantly like trying to figure out when I'm going to get pregnant. So this was like a huge deal, and it made me super uncomfortable. And when I finally did have my first kid, she was a preemie, and this was way back before we all had like smartphones everywhere. So when I gave birth ahead of time, and I couldn't work from the hospital because I gave birth ahead of time, he sent me a cellular modem so I could connect from the hospital and continue working. So that has been some of my experiences. Also in job interviews, people would always ask me, like, if you're going to work long hours, who's going to take care of the kids? How do you get a babysitter? So I feel like that's a big challenge, where people kind of interfere in your private life too much just because you're a woman.
Thank you, Orit. I've faced a lot of similar challenges, like you mentioned. Just to add a few more points to it, being in technology defaults to keeping upbeat with the newest tech advancements, new apps, gadgets, tools, tips, various other nuances that keeps coming out every single day. So, and also what we've learned or worked on like 5 to 6 years back is already dated now. So there is a constant need to keep updating yourself, which might seem daunting at times, given the family responsibilities and kids, especially like what Orit mentioned, especially when they are young. And I certainly felt this kind of a crunch at some point in my career. Also, probably because I was a little all over the place. like from IT sales to network analyst to cloud consultant to compliance and things like that. But once I found out that one niche area that I was passionate about, which is security and compliance, these challenges kind of seemed interesting to me. Now it makes me feel comfortable and stable, and in turn, able to rightly balance my career and my family.
And that is fantastic. And moving on to our next question here, we have, what are the ways in which GitLab is demonstrating a commitment to supporting gender diversity? And this is a question both for Carol and Orit. And Carol, would you like to kick us off?
Sure, I can absolutely kick off. So I think there's a number of ways we are doing this. We do, we're a very data-driven organization, as we know. So we have a KPI for our diversity side, and we've concentrated very much at the candidates we can get into the funnel, and we're continuing to do so with our change in hiring model. And all of that is excellent. And what we're doing now is expanding that further and looking at how we can ensure that we have an environment where people feel that they truly belong and can show up as themselves. And that's super important, because we can bring everybody in, but unless we have an environment where they feel included, it counteracts there. So a couple of things we're doing from an inclusion perspective and belonging side. We're expanding the D&I value. So there's a work in progress at the moment to make sure that we're building in the belonging aspect to the diversity and inclusion value. And given that we're so value driven, which is inspiring to be in a company that is driven by its values, being in there is an important element. The other thing is the D&I survey we just ran. It was the first time we did it specifically, and each e-group member is going to be reviewing their specific results and speaking with their teams to determine what actions can be taken. Although there is a lot going on out there, we can always do more. And the third piece we've just rolled out this quarter is doing performance enablement reviews. We're going to start them with the e-group, and as part of these performance enablement, for leaders, there's a segment around engagement, which includes how our focus is on diversity, inclusion, and belonging, and creating that inclusive environment. So they're just some of the highlights of what we're doing, along with all the great work I know that the advisory group and the ERGs and other team members are contributing.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. I think it's great work that we're doing around it. I'm amazed at GitLab. I've never seen any company that talks so openly about diversity and inclusion and makes it a point in the handbook, in the Slack channels. People get called out when they don't use inclusive languages. I have never experienced this in any company that I work for, and I'm like, every day I'm amazed by it. It's also really noticeable that it's not just words and that there's actions behind it. I mean, I've been to several product meetings where they've talked in quarterly meetings and they talk about how many people we recruited with a diverse background. And it's definitely a topic that comes up regardless if that's the subject of the actual meeting. So I think there's a huge space for this. And I'm really proud to be working at such a company.
Great. And our next question is, what do you think is the best part of being a woman in the tech industry? Sara and Tetiana, this question is for you. Sara, would you like to kick us off?
For sure. So what I like about being a woman in the tech industry is everything. And I know that sounds really like high level and cheesy, but it's true. Having come from the oil and gas industry that is predominantly male, which is incredibly slow, very butts and seats, boots on the ground, to be in tech and to have that shift and just the duality of the two is incredible, to be able to see that and experience it. And to what Carol and Orit were saying about the diversity and inclusion, it is palpable in tech. You can feel it every day. And that's why I love being here.
Yeah, actually, I agree with Sara. So yeah, it's a great field to be work in because like there is so many smart and interesting people, and you are open to very some different life experiences, and you can travel, and you actually, if you work in such remote company, you can like have very flexible life and have time for any other hobby that you have. And yeah, so I wish that like more women pursue career in tech, and we have like even more diverse work environment, and be exposed to even more different opinions.
Absolutely. And our next question is, what do you think is the best part of being a woman in the tech industry? And this question is for Sara and Tetiana.
So Kyla, I think we just did that
Oh,
one.
we did.
We're on to number 7. Yeah.
This one is duplicate on the sheet there. So our next question is, do you notice a lack of women in technology or in GitLab in general? If so, why do you think that's the case? And that question is both for Orit and Michelle. And Orit, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So again, I'm going to say in GitLab, I haven't felt this so much. I actually have always seen another woman on calls. So I think it's great. It has not been my experience at all in tech. I think the first time I noticed it was when I finished university. I did computer engineering. We started 8 girls and we finished 2. And like I looked around, I was like, oh, where did everyone go? And then in every single position, every time I was promoted, it was like I was the only team leader, I was the only manager, I was the only director that was a woman. So definitely, this is very noticeable in the field. And the reason I think this happens is for several reasons. I think in the first place, I, like Usha, come from an Orthodox background, a different one, but from an Orthodox background where women are supposed, their traditional role is to sit and be with the kids at home. So a lot of the girls, they go to education to learn things that are more flexible in terms of hours, like being a teacher, which is really important, but it's not like tech. And I've actually been part of an organization that pushes religious girls to go into tech because it starts from when they're teens and they need to choose their majors. And that's when they need to fall in love with tech. It needs to be at that young age. So I think there's not enough push from the house or from society in that sense. And also, once someone actually starts tech, studies are hard. It's not an easy subject, and it's easy to give up on. And then, of course, when you start having a family, there's not a lot of flexible opportunities like in GitLab where you can work remotely. People are expected to work 10 to 12-hour days, and people just give up.
Sure, I'll go. So I've been doing this for 25 years. So if there is an imbalance, it's not necessarily just at GitLab, it's across the board. I've been in infrastructure and networking, and I can remember being at a VMworld in Las Vegas at the Venetian. If anyone's been there, you have these escalators that are 3 and 4 stories tall, and no joke, full of people up and down, and it was me and all men. I've been in a service provider meeting where it was 38 men and me. And so GitLab is a little bit different, but it's still tech. I think the reason why it's like that from an industry perspective, and some of the things that we are doing here, and we can work, we are doing it, but we will and should work harder at it. Of course, the diversity and inclusion efforts, both in recruiting, but also that inclusiveness as we work, right? Remembering that keeps women in the workforce. You know, focus on family and balance is super important, but both from how we manage our time and remote working and the focus on results, but also on our policies on how we treat returning mothers or people with ailing parents and fathers in the workforce as well. And the last thing, I think I already touched on it, that I had noted down was that that inclusiveness of recognizing not about how we act in the language that we speak, but recognizing that it takes a diverse and being inclusive with diversity to get the best product ultimately, right? It takes different outlooks, and really celebrating that and capitalizing on that is going to keep women in the workforce when they have to come and make difficult decisions, right? One of the weird things about being a mom, I have found, is that I can, because being a mom is so biological in many ways, not just the baby part, but also the mothering part, is that it's very difficult for me to be great at both things at the very same moment. And so having a remote environment that allows me to balance my life and focus on work and focus on mothering has been pretty important for me. So kind of a roundabout question, but or answer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Great to hear. And our next question is for both Carol and Tetiana. What are you most excited about for the future of GitLab? Carol, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the company is an amazing trajectory, and that is fabulous to be part of. I think from being part of the people team, what really excites me is being part of a company that truly lives our values. So we don't just talk about them; they're not just up on a page somewhere. You know, they are truly lived, and you see that with all our team members feeling empowered to create initiatives, to call out values if they're being celebrated or if they need to be developed. And that's an amazing thing to work on, because it really shows that we're all taking ownership for driving an inclusive environment where we can all show up and really help scale the organization.
For me, actually, I'm very looking forward to all the new features that we are deliver and bring some value to users. And for me, actually, I would answer this question from more personal perspective. Being in GitLab is actually very interesting experience, because we are exposed to people like from different countries who live their life in different ways. And it's like constant learning about different parts of the world and different cultures. So I'm really looking forward to have even more learning and get know people from GitLab even better.
Absolutely. And our next question here is, how has your experience at GitLab been different than your experience at other companies? And Usha, that's a question for you. What do you think about that?
Kyla, that's a great question. Thank you,
Kyla. Sorry, Usha, for interrupting. We sort of midway through the call. We usually end at 2:45, but we have 15 minutes. So I just wanted to let all the speakers.
Thank you, Nadia.
Well, coming back to the question, that's a great question, Kyla. Thanks for that. Well, at my past jobs, I've been really busy traveling and commuting to work, like from New Jersey to New York City or from New Jersey to Philly. It's like 3 hours commute time, door to door, that I never realized that my daughter was growing up so fast and she needed me. And also, I'm a trained Indian classical dancer, but had no time to practice that either. And as a cloud consultant too, I was traveling very extensively all over US, and my weekends just went by beating the jet lag. But now working remotely at GitLab, even simple things like dropping my daughter off at the bus in the mornings, or maybe taking her out for an ice cream treat when she does well at school, attending her talent shows, going to the sports meet, seeing that joy on her face, it's incredible. It makes everything just worth it. And all thanks to GitLab for that, for providing this beautiful work-life balance. And I finally feel like a mom again.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. And our next question is both for Michelle and Tetiana. And the question is, what is the part about your job and being a woman during the COVID-19 pandemic? Was it something you anticipated, or was it? Michelle, what do you think?
I don't know if I anticipated or expected it, but it goes back to that point I made about my challenges of I've never found it easy to work and mother at the same time. And I'll share a story. A couple times, I don't know how everyone else is doing remote learning who have kids at homes, but my daughter's finding it very frustrating, and it goes great until it doesn't, and then it's a complete emotional outburst, and it's everything. And I agree with her. It's just plain not fair. But when it gets to that point, and she is, it just breaks my heart to think about it, just sobbing and sad and crying and frustrated. There's no way I can participate in a CRO leadership call. It's just not going to happen. And so a couple times I've had to leave a meeting, and it takes a time to get her back on track and to get her going. And so, and that's not me in a work environment. It's not how I like to show up. I like to be prepared and ready and participate and those things. So I think that's been the hardest thing, and I don't think I anticipated it. I'm super grateful for my team, both the CRO team and the channels team, in being flexible, right, and understanding, and I'm so grateful of how we document everything. So if I miss it, I can go back and participate. So yeah, I didn't expect it. It's probably been the hardest piece.
For me, actually, I feel stressed, and for me it was super unusual, because I know that, like, in the beginning when we had a lockdown in our country, I know that my life won't be disrupted very well, very like in a big matter, but still I was shocked that, like, I feel that, oh, okay, I'm in stress. It's kind of a new situation. But yeah, like working in GitLab and with all the flexibility that we have, it's really helpful to provide.
Thank you all for sharing. And now we're going to move into our audience questions. And I see that, Matt, you have the next question. Would you like to verbalize?
You do. You need to click on request participation so that I can let you in. There we go.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, in terms of things that have been helpful for your career development, things like Women Who Code, has that been helpful? And are there any other less heard of initiatives that have been helpful that we should be aware of, supporting or helping to surface?
So this is specific to my part of the industry, to channels, but I participate in Cloud Girls is not. I participate in a group called Cloud Girls, which is and have been on the board there. I'm on the board of Channel Focus, Women in Tech. There's a women's initiative there. And the women in network that I have built there, both in terms of helping me understand what my next steps in my career or networking, or my ability to mentor and network other women, and create a pool of talent that I can use later on in my career, has been super important to my success.
And I've already mentioned I've been a part of Rails Girls, which is actually another initiative to help people learn Rails and Ruby. And I feel that it's a great initiative, because it's like allow us to show that, hey, it's not so easy, not so hard. You can do it. And like, I know that the girls I was working on, they actually feel empowered after this program. So I think it's a very good experience.
Yeah, last year we attended an initiative called the Diana Initiative, which was happening at the same time as the Hacker One. This was like a real good one, where women from all over US were there and kind of coming there and showing us. And we also did some kind of lock tip, and Heather could be talking more about it. It was a great environment to kind of go there and learn also some things which men normally do. So that was a good one too.
So much for your question, Matt. And I think we have the requests coming in.
Yes. Does everybody hear me? I think so. Okay. So my question, like what I hear from the talk, by the way, sometimes a lot of juggling with multiple things at the same time. And I just wondered if any of you have like a great productivity or focus tip maybe especially in a remote environment?
Don't lay down.
Yeah, so outside of COVID, because I kind of relate to what Michelle said with the remote learning, I have 3 kids, so it's a constant battle. But putting COVID aside, what I've been really successful at in the home was creating a work environment that my kids know that this is my workspace. They know to interrupt me only if it's urgent, and they don't come like just for me, to interfere between them fighting. They can manage that themselves while at home. So I think once there's boundaries and they know that this is the work area, then they don't bug me that much. And that has been a really good way for me to set borders.
I hit the gym almost every day, and then I practice my dance. So probably that's what keeps me awake and keeps me going.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's building in time into your diary to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, and that is looking after family members, exercise, make time for breaks. And also because when you're working with different time zones as well, you can't be working from really early in the morning to late at night. So making sure you can find a schedule that works for you, that you're still going to be able to look after yourself.
And that's a great question. Thank you so much for verbalizing. And we're off to David's question. David, are you on the call today? Would you like to verbalize, or is that something that you would like me to do?
Kyla, I could not see him on the call. I tried to tag him, but I could be wrong. Do you want me to verbalize the question?
Sure, Nadia, that would be great.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so David wrote, and Carol just mentioned he's one of our board members, so thanks for the question, David. Thank you for everything you do at GitLab. Is there anything that the board can do to help to continue to support the great women at GitLab? Great question.
I'll start off, I guess. I feel the board are super supportive, and we did a deep dive on the people group the last board meeting, and we got some good examples and guidance around making sure that it's not, that we are building in that belonging element and to the environment. So I thought that was great. We've also been put in contact with some great external resources where we can learn from what other organizations have been doing. So we're going to be launching a speaker series. So David, I think any recommendations in terms of people from an external companies that you think would be great to bring in and speak with us here in GitLab would be something that would be very welcome.
Happy to do it. This has been a great panel. I appreciate everything you're all doing, so thank you.
And David, I know this is happening already, but accountability, holding us accountable for the goals that we set in the same way that you do for all the other revenue and financial metrics, and keeping them as equally as important as indicators of our success would be wonderful.
No, I appreciate that. I think that we need to do that, and we do that. I think Sid's been a great leader in that regard, and but if you ever question the commitment to it, you just let me know. I'm hornick@augustcap.com, so you can get me.
Great, thank you so much for your question. And moving on to our next question, Jean, would you like to verbalize your question?
I'm going to take a moment. It's going to show now.
That's
hopefully.
Okay. There is some delay, and that's quite all right. We're happy to wait here. How are we doing on time?
We're at my 6:42, so 9:42 a.m. Pacific time zone.
Okay, I hope you can all hear me. That's great. So my question is, what practical advice would you give to people who want to be an ally and might be new to this, to women in tech in general, but also to women at GitLab?
I think for starters, encouraging anyone around you to believe in themselves. It doesn't have to be a woman. It's just anyone that wants to start off, and giving them that push is a great place to start. Also making sure, we didn't touch on this, but one of the challenges that women have, sometimes they don't always show up to a meeting, like speak up. So make sure to make sure that everyone's included in the conversation and that all the voices are heard, I think is also a good tip.
And if no one else has a response, we can move on to our next question here. And Nicholas, you have our next question. Would you like to verbalize?
I don't see Nicholas in the waiting room yet. I've prompted him. Nicholas, if you're not going to speak up, I'll grab your question, but hoping to see you. There we go. Great. Thanks.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for hosting this. I'm wondering, how can we improve the interviewing process to remove any potential biases?
Yeah, I'll jump in as best to your ability, even if it means reaching outside your immediate team. Make sure that the interviewing panel is as diverse as the workforce you want to create. And that is, both in terms of, gender and race, but also experiences, backgrounds, inputs, and so on. We'll be sure that you get as balanced a view as possible on the candidate.
Yeah, I think the add I would make to that as well is helping each other and ourselves understand what potential unconscious biases we have, and really being cognizant of that when we're in interviews. I should add, we're working on bias training or recognizing bias, a training, a live learning that we'll be rolling out soon.
Great. Yeah, and so then as a follow-up to that, I'm wondering how we can better recruit women at GitLab to become technical interviewers.
Well, right now, for my team, I interview a lot of women and men, and I'm a technical interviewer. Apart from that, I think if there is a mentorship program or something like that in future, if we plan to, then I would love to kind of mentor anyone who wants to be a technical interviewee.
We had a suggestion come up in I think it was the D&I call recently about the AMA we had with Ryan and Marcus about the ERGs getting more involved. So that might be an area we can work with as well to make sure the ERGs are getting involved where they have capacity.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Jennifer. And Nadia, you will be verbalizing her question.
Cool. Jennifer, thanks for the question. She mentioned, I admire you all. Thank you for everything you're doing. How do you manage the balance between personal and professional life, especially if you're a mother, caretaker, and even more now in the age of COVID? What advice would you give to those that are also caretakers and also trying to grow their careers? I think we had a similar question during the initial discussion. Michelle, I don't know if this one would maybe resonate with you.
And it's an opportunity to be fully transparent. I am so fortunate in my home situation in that not early in the dating, but early in our relationship with my husband, we had the explicit discussion that, all right, if we're going to do this, this is what it's going to look like. And we chose my career as the one that we were betting on. And that I am immensely grateful for it in allowing us to have a family, but also both my parents passed away, one from a fast illness and one from a long illness in the past couple years. And my husband was right alongside me and taking care of my dad during his long illness and me after they passed. And it's not easy for everybody. And And before people look at me, understand that we made a conscious decision to organize our family in this way. And now that my daughter's getting a little bit older, my husband's reinvesting in his soccer coaching career and does private coaching and youth coaching and performance coaching. And he has the flexibility to do that because of how we've organized ourselves. So.
I just want to say about COVID, something that I learned that was really smart, and I want to give people tips about it, is the fact that I took a week off of doing nothing. I took just PTO last week, and for 7 days, I did nothing just to regroup and recharge. So it's really stressful balancing everything out, and even without kids, it's a stressful time. So I just encourage people to recognize the fact that they just need to take some time off and do that.
Great advice. And I see Dave has joined us to verbalize his question. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Kyla and team. Blown away by this incredible panel. Honored to be able to ask you a question about how we at GitLab can make our environment even more attractive to recruit more incredible women into our company. Based on your experience joining GitLab, I'd love to know if any of you has any words of advice for hiring managers or the recruiting team.
I'll go again.
Okay.
So I think that the fact that there's a remote work, now with the COVID situation, we can again leverage it, because I was a GitLab customer before joining GitLab, but I had no idea it was remote. And by chance, someone approached me on LinkedIn and asked me to apply. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to work remote. And if I would have known that before, I probably would have applied. I don't think it was well known. So I think that's something that that we can probably publicize, especially now that people are looking into it.
Just to add on to it, even I was told about GitLab through one of my LinkedIn friends. So I think the concept now we have about LinkedIn heroes and kind of going around and telling people, and it's probably word of mouth or telling your ex-colleagues how great it is to work here. Things like that would probably help bringing in the best talent in here.
Perfect. We will share this recording too.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Dave, for your question. And now we are moving on to Jesse. Hi, Jesse.
So after recruiting comes onboarding. So for hiring managers, do you have any advice to ensure successful onboarding and ramp period for new women hires in departments? The ratio is very imbalanced currently. Anyone?
I'll go again. I'll go again. I wanted to give a chance to someone else, but actually, I think one of GitLab's biggest advantages is the fact that we work asynchronous. So the ratio, I think, doesn't come up so offensive as in other companies where you're face-to-face with people all day long. So in terms of onboarding, most of the onboarding, at least with my onboarding, but also people that I have watched on board, it's usually very self-paced. So I don't think that the onboarding is the problem. It's probably the next phase. And I think it's just really important to check in as a manager, just make sure that people feel safe, feel good about it, try to see, ask questions around that and see how people feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think I was just going to add, Jesse, that it's taking the time at the beginning to really understand, following on from what Orit said, understand who they are, what's important to them, what they need is important for them to feel like they belong and that you know them as an individual. And that's not just gender, it's generally for individuals. So that's one thing. And I see Darva's made a suggestion here about having ERGs spending some time with new hires, which could be a great solution as well. Thanks, Darva.
Time check. We have 7 minutes left. Sorry, Jess.
Thank you, Jessie. On to our next question.
Hi, everyone. I'm new. Thank you for the wonderful panel. It's been really interesting and comforting, I guess. My question is about if someone is interested in a leadership or manager role, what would you recommend doing in order to potentially either dip a toe in that or pursue it?
Yeah, I'll go first. One of the biggest hurdles in getting into a leadership role is not having leadership experience, and it's this horrible catch-22 that you can get yourself into. And so finding ways to lead teams as a virtual team lead or participate in, extracurricular activities, whether it's a resource group that leads teams, that demonstrates leadership, and working with a mentor / coach at the same time in leadership, that so you can provide visibility and learn from that person, is a real practical way to get that kind of experience.
I think you just need to be transparent with your manager about your aspiration and make sure you have a career development plan with them. Because, I mean, if you're not going to speak up, no one's going to know what you want. So it's all about confidence and knowing what you want to go for and go for it.
That nobody was just automatically got leadership experience. Everybody had to start somewhere, and to the point about finding those opportunities, and they don't have to be formal, they can be informal as well.
That's all great advice. Thank you all for sharing. And we have 3 questions left. Greg, are you here to join us?
Kyla, so I can't let anyone else in at this stage. I think it's because we have 5 minutes left. So we either want to grab the last question or wrap up, unfortunately.
I think it would be fine to wrap our session up, and then the 3 questions that remain, we can forward those into our channel. You can join us in our women channel, #women, and join us, and we can have the panel answering the questions that are listed in the doc. If you're interested in joining our Women of GitLab Employee Resource Group, there is a link in the doc for you to join us. We would love all of you who have participated today to join our group, and I just thank each and every one of our panelists for joining us, as well as all of our participants. So thank you so much, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day. Thanks.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Kyla.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.